Chapter 1. Neon Shadows on Elysium Station. The marketplace of Elysium Station never slept. Even in the false night cycle, when the station's upper dome dimmed to mimic twilight, neon lights from stalls and hollow signs bled into the air like liquid fire. Smells drifted across the crowded causeway. Ozone from sputtering power coils. Frying spices from a dozen worlds. The bitter sting of recycled coolant from overworked vents. Voices overlapped in a chorus of languages, guttural, clicking, musical, and shrill. Jace Callan pushed his way through the crowd with the weary determination of a man who had been here too many times. His boots rang dull against the metal plating, half drowned out by the constant hum of grav engines deep in the station's bones. He kept one hand on his worn satchel, and the other near the sidearm at his hip. On Elysium, you didn't last long if you looked unprepared. A vendor barked in a thick accent, shoving a tray of steaming skewers in his direction. "Human, you like? Charbird from Polaresh Moon. Half price for strong stomachs." Jay shook his head, lips quirking at the familiar pitch. He wasn't here for food. Not tonight. That's when he saw them. Two figures darting through the shadows near a fruit stand. At first glance, just children smaller than his chest. But when the lights caught them, Jace's eyes narrowed. Their skin shimmered faintly under the glow, pale violet with opalescent veins, hair like strands of silver-white silk. Yuri. The taller one clutched a bruised piece of fruit to her chest, while the smaller stumbled after her, hollow cheeks sunken, eyes wide with fear. The vendor shouted, his clawed hand flailing. "Thieves! Filthy Yuri rats!" He lunged, but the twins bolted, vanishing into the maze of alleys between stacked stalls. Jace didn't know why his legs moved. Instinct, maybe, or the way the smaller one had glanced back, eyes glowing faintly in the neon haze, full of something rawer than hunger, desperation. He slipped into the alley after them, boots quiet now, letting the shadows swallow him. The deeper he went, the less the noise of the market followed. The alley smelled of rust and stale coolant, lit only by the occasional flicker of failing neon tubes. He caught sight of the twins crouched behind a stack of crates, sharing the stolen fruit in quick, furtive bites. The smaller one coughed, a ragged sound that cut too deep for someone so young. Jace leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You two planning to live off bruised fruit forever?" The twins froze. The older one pushed the younger behind her, lips drawn back, a faint hiss rumbling in her throat. Despite her thin frame and trembling shoulders, she stood between Jace and her sibling like a cornered predator. Jace raised a hand slowly. "Easy. I'm not the vendor. Not here to take it back." Suspicion glimmered in their alien eyes, large, almost luminous, reflecting every flicker of light. The younger one whispered something in her own tongue, voice weak, and the older hushed him with a gentle touch. Jace crouched to their level, letting the dim light soften the lines of his scarred face. "You look like hell. Haven't eaten a real meal in days. I'd bet. Weeks maybe." Silence. Just the quiet rasp of their breathing and the faint pulse of machinery running through the walls. He reached into his satchel, pulling out a ration bar. He broke it in half and set it on the crate, pushing it toward them before backing away. "Take it or don't. But don't think I didn't notice you're dying where you sit." The twins stared. The younger one's hands twitched, but the older shook her head, narrowing her eyes at him. Jace almost smiled. Too much pride, even now. "You're stubborn," he said softly. "Reminds me of, well, people like me." For a long moment, neither moved. Then the younger snatched the food and devoured it, trembling with hunger. The older watched every second, gaze still wary, but her shoulders sagged with something that might have been relief. Jace straightened, pulling his coat tighter against the chill that crept in these back corridors. He didn't owe them anything. They weren't his responsibility. On Elysium Station, kindness was a luxury that could get you killed. And yet, as he turned to leave, the younger twin whispered, barely audible in broken standard, "Thank you." Jace froze. Few words. Thin, trembling, but more human than anything else he'd heard in weeks. He sighed, raking a hand through his hair. Damn it all. He looked back at them, their fragile forms huddled together in the glow of dying neon. "All right," he muttered. "Let's get you a real meal." The hum of engines deep below seemed to answer, steady and inevitable, as if the station itself had just witnessed the first spark of something it didn't yet understand. Chapter 2. A meal paid in blood credits. The diner sat on the edge of the market ring, squeezed between a coolant recycling plant and a row of shuttered gambling dens. A flickering sign buzzed overhead in half-dead neon. Myra's Grill. The smell of fried protein oil drifted into the alley, mixing with the sharp tang of ozone leaking from the recycler vents. Jace pushed the door open with his shoulder. The hinges squealed, and the heavy air inside smelled of old grease and sterilizer. A low hum came from the ancient ceiling fans, trying and failing to chase away the haze. The twins hesitated outside, clinging to each other, eyes darting like cornered prey. Jace looked back and crooked a finger. "Come on. You'll be safer in here than out in that alley." They followed, small and silent, their bare feet whispering against the stained metal floor. Other patrons, a pair of reptilian traders, a group of insectoid dock workers, even a lone armored mercenary, lifted their eyes as the strange trio entered. Some stared too long. The sight of Yuri children was rare, and rarer still when accompanied by a human. Jace chose a booth near the back, away from the main crowd, and motioned for the twins to sit. They pressed together on one side of the booth, their frail frames hardly taking up half the seat. The younger clutched his sister's hand, as though she were the only anchor keeping him from drowning. A tired woman with cybernetic implants in her arms shuffled over. She wore a cracked visor that glowed faintly, scanning orders. "What'll it be?" Her eyes flicked to the twins, then back to Jace. Suspicion darkened her tone. Jace ignored it. 3 bowls of stew, real protein, not vat filler, and bread. "That'll cost you," she said flatly. Jace pulled out his cred chip. The glowing balance made his stomach tighten. Barely enough left to fuel his freighter out of dock. He slid it onto the table anyway. "Just bring the food." The waitress muttered under her breath and walked away. The twins sat rigid, their luminous eyes darting around the room, always coming back to him. Jace tried to make his voice casual. "You ever had human cooking?" No answer. The older girl kept her chin high, protective. The younger fidgeted with the edge of the booth, eyes wide at the glowing menus flashing across the walls. When the bowls arrived, steaming and fragrant, Jace pushed them across the table. The smell of spice broth and roasted vegetables filled the air. The younger twin's nose twitched. His hand moved forward, then stopped short, as though waiting for permission. The older one shook her head. She whispered in their native tongue, sharp, musical syllables. The boy's shoulders drooped. Jace frowned. "You don't trust me. I get it." He scooped a spoonful from his own bowl and ate it slowly, eyes on them. "See? No tricks. Just food." The boy's resolve broke. He seized a spoon with trembling hands, slurping the stew so quickly it spilled down his chin. The girl gave a soft hiss of disapproval, then, after one last wary glance at Jace, lifted her own spoon. For a few minutes, the only sound was a clatter of spoons and the quiet, desperate hunger of children who hadn't eaten in days. Jace leaned back, watching. Something tightened in his chest. He'd seen suffering before: wars, famines, riots. But there was something different about this. The door banged open. 3 thick-set figures entered, wearing the black sashes of station enforcers. Their reptilian faces twisted, when they saw the booth in the back. One muttered, loud enough for the whole diner to hear, "Look at that! A human wasting blood credits on Yuri scum." The room grew tense. Patrons lowered their eyes, wanting no part of what was coming. Jace kept his tone even. "They're kids, eating a meal. That a crime now?" The largest enforcer sneered, slamming a clawed hand onto Jace's table. The bowls rattled. "It's a crime to waste food on animals that should have starved with their people." His yellow eyes flicked to the twins. "Better to sell them to the mines. At least then they'd earn their keep." The girl flinched but didn't retreat. Her hand slid protectively in front of her brother. Jace's jaw tightened. He rose slowly, his shadow falling across the table. The enforcer laughed. "What? You think one human can stop us?" Jace met his gaze, unflinching. His voice was low, dangerous. "I don't think. I know." For a heartbeat, silence reigned. The hum of the ceiling fan seemed louder than the world. Then the enforcer spat on the floor, muttered something in his tongue, and backed away. "Not worth the blood tonight. But you'll regret it, human." They left, laughter echoing down the corridor. Jay sat back down. His stew had gone cold, but the twins still ate wide-eyed, stealing glances at him as if trying to decide what kind of creature this human truly was. Jace rubbed at his temple, muttering to himself, "Damn it, Callan, you stepped in it now." But when the younger twin shyly pushed half a piece of bread across the table toward him, Jace couldn't help the ghost of a smile. Chapter 3, Chains of the Forgotten. The neon glare of Elysium's market ring had thinned by the time Jace left Myra's grill. The din of shouting vendors had quieted to a low murmur, the night cycle crowd drifting toward gambling halls and dens of smoke. The twins followed close at his heels, silent as shadows. Their thin shapes pressed together as they walked, clutching each other's hands as if separation meant death. Jace slowed his pace, glancing back at them. He wasn't sure if they were following him out of choice, fear, or simply because they had nowhere else to go. They reached the docking ring, where the air smelled of coolant and burnt plasma. Starships groaned in their berths, and the deep, steady hum of the station's reactor vibrated through the deck plating. Jace's ship, a battered freighter with half its hull patched and mismatched panels, sat waiting, haloed in dim amber lights. "Home, sweet home," Jace muttered. The twins exchanged a glance. The older one tilted her head, her silver hair catching the light. "This yours?" she asked in broken standard. Jace nodded. "For better or worse." Inside, the freighter smelled of metal, old coffee, and machine oil. The hum of life support filled the narrow corridors. The twins stepped cautiously aboard, peering at the bulkheads as though they were entering a predator's mouth. He led them to the mess hall, just a compact galley and a table bolted to the floor. As they settled in, Jace rummaged through a locker and pulled out a medkit. He crouched in front of the younger twin, who was coughing again, his chest rattling with each breath. "Hold still," Jay said, his voice gentler than usual. He activated the scanner, an old model, buzzing faintly as it ran over the boy's frail frame. The readout glowed crimson. Malnutrition, infection in the lungs, weak cardiovascular activity. Jace hissed through his teeth. "Damn it." He applied a stim patch to the boy's arm. The child flinched but didn't cry out. The older twin wrapped her arms protectively around him, glaring at Jace with suspicion. "I'm helping," Jace said firmly. "If I wanted to hurt him, I wouldn't bother with medicine." Her luminous eyes softened, just a fraction. He sat back, sighing. "You need real treatment. Proper food. Clean air. But no one's going to give that to Yuri kids, are they?" The girl's face tightened. She spoke softly her own tongue, and the boy whispered back, their voices like music carried on broken breath. Finally, she looked at Jace. Her standard was halting, but her words were sharp with truth. Our people forgotten, starved, left to die, because we lost. Jace's throat tightened. He'd heard the stories, how the Yuri had resisted the consortium, fought bitterly, and lost everything. The victors cut off their colonies, sanctioned their trade, erased them from history. Whole worlds choked to death under hunger, and no one cared. Before he could respond, the freighter's deck vibrated with heavy footsteps. A warning shiver ran down Jace's spine. He rose, hand drifting toward his sidearm, just as a hatch burst open. 3 alien enforcers stepped inside, the same kind he'd faced in the diner. Their armor gleamed under the harsh light, black sashes marked with the consortium sigil. Well, well, the leader hissed, his reptilian mouth curving in a cruel grin. The human petting strays. The twins froze. The boy coughed violently, clutching his sister. She stood in front of him, trembling but defiant. Jace moved between them and the intruders, his voice cold. You got the wrong ship. The enforcer chuckled. No mistake. The Yuri are forbidden here. Feeding them, sheltering them, crime. You'll pay in blood credits. Human. He lunged. Jace's blaster cleared its holster in a flash of steel. The first shot seared across the enforcer's arm, sending him reeling. The second attacker swung a shock baton, sparks hissing through the air. Jace ducked, the weapon cracking against the bulkhead. He drove an elbow into the alien's throat, then slammed him against the wall with raw, stubborn force. The fight raged in the cramped corridor, metal ringing with each blow, the stench of scorched armor filling the air. Jace took a hit to the ribs, pain lancing through his side. But he didn't falter. Humans didn't falter. Not when something mattered. Finally, with a desperate roar, he drove the last enforcer back through the hatch, slamming it shut and locking the bulkhead. Blood trickled from his lip, his knuckles raw. He turned, chest heaving, to find the twins huddled together, staring at him with wide, glowing eyes. The girl whispered, voice trembling, "Why?" Jace wiped the blood from his chin and gave a crooked smile. Because someone should. For the first time, her expression cracked. Not fear, not suspicion. Something else. Something that looked like fragile hope. The boy whispered a word in his own tongue, soft as a prayer. Jace didn't understand it, but he didn't need to. Chapter 4. The Cost of Kindness. The freighter's engines rumbled faintly in their sleep cycle, the sound like a heartbeat reverberating through the bulkheads. Jace leaned against the galley counter, arms crossed, watching the twins devour the meal he'd thrown together from ration packs and salvaged vegetables. The broth was thin, the bread half stale, but the way they ate, slow at first, then ravenous, made the modest meal feel like a feast. The boy coughed between bites, though softer now, the stem patch still holding. His sister placed a steadying hand on his back each time, murmuring in their language, fierce protectiveness glowing in her every motion. Jace couldn't help the small smile tugging at his mouth. For the first time in years, his ship didn't feel so empty. "You too," he said, voice rough with Yu's warmth, "are going to learn a few things if you're staying here. Cooking's one. Fixing leaks is another. And rule number 1, you don't touch the emergency airlock controls. Ever." The girl tilted her head, silver hair falling across her face. "Learn human things?" she asked in halting standard. Jace chuckled, scratching at his jaw. "Yeah, human things. Survival things." He showed them how to patch a crack cable with resin, their small fingers fumbling at first before growing steadier. He even handed them an old spanner, watching as the boy clutched it with something like pride. It was a fragile routine, but for a fleeting hour, the weight of the galaxy seemed far away. Then the ship's lights flickered. Jace froze. That wasn't a normal power surge. He knew his freighter's every groan and sputter, and this was different. Sabotage! The alarm in his gut surged just as a metallic clang echoed through the corridor. He swore, rushing to the hatch. The twins shrank back, fear igniting in their luminous eyes. "Stay here," Jace ordered, pulling his blaster free. His voice brooked no argument. He moved through the narrow corridor, the hum of engines suddenly harsh in his ears. At the junction, he found it. Someone had forced the access panel open, wires cut clean. The main coupling was damaged, the power bleed intentional. His ship had been marked. A shadow fell across him. "Should have known a fool like you would take strays." A voice sneered. From the shadow stepped a figure Jace knew too well. Tarn Hessa, a fellow smuggler and sometime drinking partner. His grin was cruel now, his weapon already drawn. "They're worth a fortune on the black markets." Tarn continued, eyes glinting. "I warned you not to get soft, but you just had to play savior." Jace's grip tightened on his blaster. "Walk away, Tarn." Tarn laughed, the sound hollow. "Can't. Too many hungry buyers. And you? You'll be dead before you even reach the med bay." Movement at the far end of the corridor. Two more shapes, slavers armored, shot prods humming. Jace swore under his breath. The corridor was too tight, nowhere to maneuver. The twins appeared at the hatch behind him, wide-eyed. The boy clutched the spanner like a weapon, shaking but refusing to hide. The girl's chin lifted, her thin frame trembling yet unyielding. Jace's chest burned. He could run. He could give them up. Save himself. That's what Tarn expected. That's what everyone expected from a human, with nothing left to lose. But Jace wasn't everyone. He fired first. The blast lit the corridor in searing blue, striking Tarn's shoulder and spinning him back with a howl. Chaos erupted. Shock prods crackled as the slavers lunged. Jace ducked, rolling against a bulkhead, his blaster snapping out shot after shot. Sparks rained as energy bolts struck steel. One slaver fell. The other swung his prod at Jace's ribs, electricity burning into his side. Pain lanced through him, but he snarled, grabbing the alien's wrist and slamming his head into the wall. The sickening crunch silenced him. Jace staggered, blood running down his temple. Tarn had vanished into the shadows, cursing, retreating, breath ragged. Jace turned back. The twins stood frozen, their eyes glowing like fractured stars. Then the boy dropped the spanner, rushing forward. His small hand pressed against Jace's arm, trembling but steady. The girl whispered in broken standard, her voice carrying more weight than any weapon. "We not leave you." Jace closed his eyes for a moment, the ache in his ribs, nothing compared to the ache in his chest. Kindness had a cost. He knew it now, but as the freighter's engines hummed back to life around them, he also knew it was a price he'd pay again and again. Chapter 5, Whispers of War. By the time Jace finished patching the slashed coupling and purging the scorched stink from the corridor, station midnight had come and gone. The freighters unsteadied, a patient throb through the bulkheads. In the mess, the twins watched the diagnostic hollow spin above the table, ghostly blue schematics reflected in their luminous eyes. The boy's cough had softened. The girl's gaze stayed sharp, measuring, wary, curious all at once. Dock Master flagged our berth. Jace said, tossing a rag into the sink. Clamp status went from green to routine inspection, which is station speak for we're not leaving. The girl's fingers tightened around the boy's. She angled her chin toward the vibrating hull, as if listening to something beneath the human ear. "Hunters," she said softly. "They will come." Jace poured himself coffee that had boiled too long and tasted like burnt metal. "I know, which is why you're going to tell me why you're worth a small war." For a heartbeat, only the engine's pulse answered. The twins exchanged a look, a conversation passing between them with no words at all. Then the girl reached across the table and dragged the diagnostic hollow closer. Her hands hovered over projection, not touching, just harmonizing. The image shivered. New symbols crawled along the edges. Scripts Jace had never seen. Jace straightened. That's not standard. How are you? Not we, the girl whispered. The ones before us. She pressed her palm flat to the projector. The air seemed to hum in sympathy. Our people carry memory, not of faces, but of how things sing. She pinched the image, and the freighter vanished. In its place unfolded a star map. No, a lattice of coordinates braided like living thread. Certain nodes flared, each accompanied by a faint chime that made the hair on Jace's arms rise. Vaults, the boy rasped, voice thin but sure. Places where the Yuri hid what the consortium could not break. Jace stared. Lost tech. Not lost, the girl corrected gently. Sleeping. He felt the old pilot's itch. Curiosity, that ruinous human flaw. And you can wake it. The girl's eyes flicked his. We can remember the song, but we cannot survive the choir alone. Before Jace could ask what that meant, the freighter's external mics picked up a distant clatter. Mag boots on gantries, too many, too fast. A tourist station broadcast snapped into his cabin. All clipped consonants and fake calm. Security sweep in progress. All crews remain in quarters. Routine inspection, Jace muttered, reaching for his sidearm. Right. He killed the cabin lights. Darkness wrapped the mess. The hollow cast the twins in ocean blue. Jace's mind spun through options. Blast the clamps and risk a hull shear, or slip the net on foot and make for a secondary berth. He looked at the twins, small, breakable, hungry, and knew which plan he'd choose. Mag boots, he whispered, strapping on his own. He tugged a second pair from a locker and knelt to fasten them over the boy's narrow feet. The kid flinched at the cold buckles, then steadied. You ever been in 0G? The boy shook his head. The girl lifted her chin. We will learn your way. Good answer. They slipped into utility spines, narrow arteries running behind the docking bay like the station's unglamorous guts. The air smelled of coolant and old insulation. When Jace pried open a maintenance hatch, a cold wind breathed over their faces. Beyond lay the cargo spine, a long cylinder studded with handholds and sealed doors, spinning just enough to give a whisper of pull. Jace thumbed his boots to half power. The twins did the same, copying his stance without a word. Voices echoed from the docking ring. The harsh clack of alien consonants, the buzz of shock prods arming. Jace gestured down spine and pushed off, drifting in a smooth arc until the boots kissed metal again. The twins followed, lighter, almost graceful in the thin pull. The boy's laugh, tiny and incredulous, escaped before he clapped both hands to his mouth. Behind them, a hatch boomed open. Light speared the spine. There, someone barked. Jace slapped a control pad. The spine's rotation hiccuped as he overrode a maintenance script. Gravity fell away like a pulled curtain. They were suddenly adrift, all of them, Jace, the twins, and the pursuing mercs who had counted on their weight. The first alien flailed, slamming shoulder first into a bulkhead. The second tried to bring his prod to bear and spun helplessly. Humans learn to fall before they learn to walk, Jace thought, and kicked off. He sailed past a rack pallet, snagged its net, and yanked. The whole bundle drifted into the corridor like a lumbering whale. The merc's prod crackled, its arc scattered harmlessly in vacuum-dry air. Jace shoved the pallet hard. It drift collided with two pursuers, pinning them in an ungainly tangle. The third hissed in rage and raised a pistol. Down! Jace barked. The girl didn't duck. She moved. One hand brushed the service plate. Her fingers traced a pattern from a memory that wasn't hers. A maintenance iris blinked open just long enough for a gust of compressed air to howl through. The shot went wide, streaking past Jace's ear hot enough to singe hair. He caught the handhold and redirected, a swimmer in an invisible sea. "Nice trick," he panted. The girl's mouth curved, the ghost a smile in the dark. "Not a trick, a song." They drifted through a junction into a shadowed cul-de-sac, sealed on 3 sides by cargo lockers. Jace pinged a manual release. It flashed red, locked from Central. The Mercs banged toward the junction, regaining control as the spine's slow spin resumed. "We're boxed," Jay said, "unless you can sing us a door." The twins shared glance. The boy pressed his palm to the locker seam, eyes fluttering closed. The girl began to hum. Not words, not quite melody, but something that resonated with the spine's faint vibration. The panel trembled. Symbols flickered at the edge of vision, as if reluctant to be seen. With a reluctant sigh, the lock cycled. The door slid wide enough for a human shoulder. "Go!" Jace hissed, shoving the boy through, then the girl, then twisting after them. Shots sizzled against the closing seam. He kissed his boot as it snapped shut. They fell into darkness. For a second, no one moved. Jace's chest heaved. His ribs burned where a prod had tagged him hours earlier. The twins' breathing skittered in the close space. He flipped his visor lamp on low. They were in a maintenance chamber above a secondary berth. Below a grated floor, a small shuttle crouched like a sleeping insect, abandoned but not dead. He could hear its power umbilical humming faintly through the grating. Jace looked at the twins. They looked back, faces blue-white in the lamp's glow. The boy reached out and touched Jace's sleeve with trembling fingers. The girl spoke first, voice barely more than breath. "We believe," she said, careful with the words. "You are our family now." Something old and stubborn in Jace, something that had survived wars and 6 bad years, loosened. He nodded once, as if sealing a contract with a whole uncaring universe. "Then let's get our family off the station." The hum of engines, the whisper of alien songs, the hiss of distant anger, all braided together as Jace dropped to one knee and began hot-wiring the shuttle with humans' favorite tools. A chipped multi-tool, a short memory for fear, and the absolute refusal to leave anyone behind. Chapter 6. Betrayal Among the Stars. The shuttle's engines coughed like a half-dead beast, then roared awake. Jace strapped himself into the pilot's seat, his hands moving across cracked panels with the surety of muscle memory. The twins huddled in the co-pilot's chair, too small to fill it, eyes wide at the star map unfolding across the forward canopy. Beyond, Elysium Station's docking bay glowed with hazard lights, crimson pulses cutting across the metal cavern. "Hang on," Jace muttered. He thumbed the thrusters. The shuttle lurched forward, disengaging from the umbilical with a metallic groan. The docking authority's comm flared in his ear. "Unauthorized launch detected. Shut down immediately or face lethal force." Jace snorted. "Guess we're choosing lethal." He yanked the throttle. The shuttle shot from the berth, out into the void. For a heartbeat, the black of space swallowed them whole, velvet emptiness stitched with distant stars. The gas giant beneath Elysium rolled like a storm-tossed sea, its violet clouds curling and breaking against gravity's pull. The twins clung to the harness straps, eyes shining not with fear, but awe. For children who had known only hunger and alleys, the stars themselves seemed to feast. Jace didn't have time to admire it. Red triangles bloomed on a scanner. Pursuit. 3 ships detached from the station's outer ring. Sleek, predatory silhouettes. Slavers. Tarn Hess's marks scrawled across their hulls. Jace's gut twisted. Of course it's Tarn. The girl leaned forward. "The betrayer?" "Yeah," Jace said tightly, knuckles white on the stick. "Friend once. Guess I shouldn't be surprised. Credits weigh more than loyalty on this station." The comm crackled, and Tarn's voice poured through, smug and sharp. Jace, 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 you always were too sentimental. Should have joined me when I asked. Instead, you've thrown in with ghosts. Jace cut the channel with a jab of his thumb. Not interested. The first volley came hard and fast. Ion burst screaming past the canopy, white trails fading into nothing. The shuttle bucked under the impact of a near miss. Panels flickered. Alarms wailed. Hold tight! Jace barked. He flipped the shuttle sideways, using the gas giant's gravity well like a sling. The stars blurred into streaks as the vessel dove. Slaver ships howled after them. The boy coughed, clutching the seat. We fall. Jace risked a glance back, his grin wild despite the danger. We fly. Trust me. The shuttle skimmed the upper atmosphere, violet clouds boiling below. Lightning storms rage across the giant's surface, each strike 1,000 kilometers wide, painting the black with fire. Jace threaded the shuttle between magnetic eddies, the hull groaning. A slaver ship closed fast, locking weapons. Not good, Jace muttered. The girl's hand pressed against the console. She whispered something in Yuri, soft, resonant, like a chord on unseen strings. The lights on the panel fluttered, then steadied. Suddenly the shuttle sensors flared with a new path, a sliver-thin window through the turbulence, invisible to the eye, but mapped in glowing lines. Jace blinked. You did that. She nodded, face pale but determined. Memory. The old songs show ways through storms. Then let's sing louder. He plunged into the route, trusting the alien pattern. The slaver ship followed, but too late. Its hull scraped against a magnetic surge. Shields flared, engines stuttered. The Predator spun away, crippled. Cheers erupted from the boy, ragged but bright. Jace only tightened his grip. 2 more behind us. The comm crackled again. Tarn's voice colder now. You can't win, Jace. The twins belong to the markets. You're just prolonging the inevitable. Jace's jaw clenched. He opened the channel. You don't get it, Tarn. Humans don't do inevitable. He cut the comm and dove again. The shuttle tore free of the gravity well, engines screaming. The twins pressed against their harnesses, breathless. Behind them, the 2 remaining ships kept pace, firing. The canopy lit with streaks of plasma. The boy's hand shook as he pointed to the star map. There, a gate, but... The girl finished for him. It is guarded. Jace saw it, a consortium patrol frigate parked beside the jump gate, bristling with guns. If they reached it, they might escape. If not, he bared his teeth in a grin that was more defiance than humor. Guess we'll see how special humans really are. He shoved the throttle forward. The shuttle leapt for the gate, fire and betrayal snapping at its heels, and Jace Callan swore to himself that whatever waited on the other side, he'd get the twins there alive, even if it killed him. Chapter 7. The Heart That Feeds the Hungry. The consortium frigate loomed before him like a floating cathedral of war, angular hull plates glowing with pale blue shield lines, its spine bristling with weapon turrets that tracked the void like watchful eyes. The gate shimmered beyond it, a swirling vortex of silver light, bending the stars into a whirlpool. Freedom lay a heartbeat away, but the frigate stood between. Jace's hands tightened on the controls. The shuttle's panels screamed warnings. Overheating thrusters, cracked stabilizers, fuel cells running too hot. The twins sat strapped in behind him, their eyes reflecting the starlight, their breaths ragged. Hang on, Jace muttered, voice rough. This is where it gets ugly. The slaver ships bore down, spitting plasma. The frigate's turrets swiveled, suddenly as hungry for Jace's shuttle as for the pirates. The void lit with streaks of fire. The shuttle jolted as a bolt grazed its flank, metal shrieking. Sparks showered across the cockpit. The boy cried out. Jace threw the shuttle into a spin, gravity flickering on and off as the inertial dampeners overloaded. The girl leaned forward, gripping his sleeve. You cannot fight them. Too many. Jace's grin was grim, feral. Humans don't count numbers when family's on the line. He yanked the throttle hard, sending the shuttle skimming the frigate's armored belly. Weapon fire tore past, narrowly missing. The shields crackled around them, a luminous wall of energy that bent light itself. Shields are too strong, Jace growled. Can't punch through. The twins exchanged a look. Silent, wordless understanding. The girl pressed both hands to the console. Her voice slipped into a hum. Low at first, then rising, weaving with strange harmonics. The boy joined her, his cough folding into the rhythm until it became something deeper, older. The frigate shuddered. Jace's eyes widened as his sensors went haywire. Frequencies spiked. The twin song, alien resonant, aching, was echoing through the ship's systems, vibrated with the frigate's shield harmonics. The girl's voice broke into words. Sing with us. Jace barked a laugh, half mad. Lady, I can't carry a tune in a bucket. Not voice, she insisted, sweat beading on her brow. Heart. Push. And suddenly he understood. The Yuri's ancestral memory was not just data, but resonance. Living memory carried in flesh. And humans had always been the ones to make fire burn hotter, wheels spin faster, odds bend until they broke. Jay slammed the shuttle into a dive, then pulled up with every ounce of thrust. All right, let's push. The twins' voices rose. Jace's hands moved like extensions of their song, guiding the shuttle into a sliver-thin trajectory along the frigate's shield seam. The hum built into a scream. The frigate's shields faltered, just for a breath, just enough. Now! Jace roared and drove the shuttle straight through. The world became fire and thunder. Alarms shrieked. The cockpit filled with the stink of scorched wiring. For an instant, Jace thought they'd been torn apart. Then the shuttle burst free on the other side, trailing smoke, shields cracked but alive. Behind them, one of the slaver ships collided with a flickering shield, its hull bursting into incandescent shards. The second spun off course, engines failing. The third limped, but refused to die, clinging to their trail like a starving wolf. Jace's vision blurred, pain lancing through his ribs from the earlier shock. His arms trembled on the stick. He could have collapsed, let it end. But then he saw the twins, still singing, still pouring every scrap of their fragile bodies into the fight. Their voices cracked but never faltered. And he thought, if they won't give up, then neither will I. The slaver's last shot speared across the void, striking the shuttle's tail. Systems flared red. Hull breach imminent. Jace didn't hesitate. He cut life support in the aft compartments, rerouting every drop of power to the engines. The shuttle surged, faster than it had ever flown, faster than it should have been able to fly. The gates swallowed them whole. Silver light engulfed the cockpit, twisting reality into a luminous tunnel. The stars stretched and warped. The roar of the engines became a whisper, then silence. Jace sagged back into his seat, blood dripping from a cut across his brow. The twins collapsed against each other, their song fading to faint, exhausted breaths. For a long moment, the three of them floated in the quiet glow of the slipstream, broken, scarred, alive. Jace closed his eyes, a tired smile tugging at his lips. Told you, he whispered hoarsely. Humans don't lose when it matters. The twins leaned into him, their tiny hands clutching his sleeve. And in the silence between stars, their fragile voices answered in unison. Family. Chapter 8. Home is where humanity lives. The slipstream spat them out into quiet space, far from Elysium Station, far from consortium patrols, far from the reach of Tarn and his slavers. Stars gleamed sharp and unblinking across the void. The shuttle drifted, wounded but still alive, hull plating scorched and panels sparking faintly in the dark. Inside the cockpit, silence settled like a blanket after the chaos. Only the low hum of auxiliary power filled the air, punctuated by the faint hiss of recycled oxygen. Jace leaned back in the pilot's chair, every muscle aching. His ribs burned, his knuckles throbbed, but for the first time in days, he let himself breathe. The twins were curled together in the co-pilot seat, their chests rising and falling in exhausted unison. Silver hair tangled across their foreheads. They looked peaceful, almost ordinary. Not fugitives, not orphans of starved war, just children who had eaten, fought, and survived another night. Jace let his eyes linger on them. Something warm and unfamiliar pressed against his chest. Not the duty he'd felt when patching them up, not the reckless defiance that had carried them through battle. Something quieter, something harder to name. He shook himself and pushed up from the chair. The shuttle's medkit was nearly depleted, but he found a strip of bandages and wrapped his ribs. Each tug made him hiss through clenched teeth. Damn, old bones weren't built for this. A soft sound drew his gaze. The girl had stirred, her luminous eyes blinking open. She watched him in silence before whispering, "You hurt." Jace gave her a crooked smile. "Nothing new. Humans break easy, but we get up again. That's the trick." She tilted her head, considering him with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. Then she nodded, as though filing the truth away in some secret ledger of hers. The boy stirred next, coughing softly. Jace grabbed a water flask and pressed it into his small hands. The child drank greedily, water dripping down his chin. He paused only to whisper a word in Yuri, glancing between Jace and his sister. "What did he say?" Jace asked. The girl's lips curved faintly. "He says, 'You are strange and strong. Strong in ways not in muscle.'" Jace barked a laugh, then winced at the ache in his ribs. "Tell him that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." The shuttle rattled as its battered system cycled down. Jace glanced at the NAV screen. Empty space, no immediate threats, just a quiet drift of stars. For now, they were safe. He pulled 3 ration packs from the emergency stores and set them on the small mess table. "Come on, eat while we can." The twin slid into the booth opposite him. The boy tore into the food without hesitation, crumbs clinging to his lips. The girl ate slower, watching Jace between bites, as if trying to understand a man who had thrown away everything for them. For a while, the only sounds were chewing, the faint hum of systems, the deep silence of space beyond. It wasn't much, but it felt like a family meal. Jace leaned his elbows on the table, rubbing at tired eyes. "I don't know where we're headed. Consortium's going to have patrols sniffing for us. Tarn won't quit easy. But," he trailed off, then forced a smile, "we'll figure it out. Humans always do." The girl reached across the table. Her thin fingers closed around his callous hand, surprisingly firm. Not alone. Together. The boy echoed softly in his halting standard, "Family!" Jace's throat tightened. He looked at them, 2 fragile lives clinging to him like he was their anchor, and for the first time in years, he felt the weight of loneliness lift. Not gone, not erased, but shared. He squeezed their hands gently. "Yeah, family." Outside the viewport, the stars stretched endless and untamed. Beyond them lay danger, betrayal, and wars that hadn't yet finished burning. But in the shuttle's quiet heart, 3 souls had chosen something stronger than fear, stronger than hunger, stronger than the galaxy's cruelty. They had chosen each other. Jace leaned back, the faintest smile on his battered face. "We're not hungry anymore," he whispered. And for the first time in years, he believed it. The hum of the ship's engines was steady now, like a heartbeat that had found its rhythm after chaos. Through the viewport stretched a tapestry of alien constellations, violet stars pulsing against the endless dark, fragments of neon-lit trade lanes threading across distant worlds. Jace sat in the pilot's chair, shoulders bruised but unbowed, watching the twins doze against the curve of the co-pilot's seat. Their silver hair shimmering in the glow, their breaths even, their hunger finally stilled. For weeks he had fought, bled, and run, from Elysium's shadows to the slipstream's fire. Every step had tested the stubborn streak that only a human could mistake for hope. Now, at last, there was silence, not the hollow kind he'd lived with for years, but the fragile, living silence of family. The girl stirred, opening luminous eyes. She looked at him with something no Yuri had ever offered a human before. Trust without condition. "We remember many songs," she whispered, her voice trembling like starlight. "But yours is new." Jace's throat tightened. He reached out, rough fingers brushing hers across the console. "Then keep it, because it's ours now." Outside, the galaxy rolled on merciless, vast, untamed. Inside, three souls leaned closer to one another, the faint pulse of artificial gravity grounding them in something more enduring than war or hunger. The boy whispered, almost to himself, "We're not alone anymore." And Jace, with a tired, stubborn smile that belonged only to a human, answered softly, "No, we never were."